Welcome to the Create Your Story podcast, with conversations on creativity, self-leadership and personality to inspire and support your wholehearted life. I'm Terry Conlon, author, creative transition coach, teacher and personality type practitioner. Before we begin today's episode, I'd like to pay my respects to the Dharawal people, the traditional custodians of the land where I'm recording this podcast, and extend that respect to the traditional owners of lands across Australia and to elders past, present and emerging. You can find the episode show notes, your free copy of Chapter 1 of my book, Wholehearted Self-Leadership for Women in Transition, and lots more information at quietwriting.com. Now settle back and enjoy today's show. Welcome to episode 16 of the Create Your Story podcast, and it's the 5th of May as I record this. I'm excited to have Meaghan Katrak Harris, author of Memoirs and Elephants, The Art of Casual Racism, join us for the podcast today. Meaghan is a social worker, academic, consultant and writer. She has a long and diverse social work background. This includes extensive experience and commitment to working alongside First Nations peoples, families and communities. When not writing, Meaghan lectures and researches in social work at the University of Sydney and works in private practice across social work supervision, individual, group work and organisational change. Memories and Elephants, The Art of Casual Racism is her first creative non-fiction book. Meaghan and I have connected online as fellow The Kind Press authors, publishing our books within a few months of each other. It's been exciting to watch Meaghan launch and share her important book with the world. We chat about Meaghan's book, as well as her work as social worker, academic and writer, and her key themes and lived experiences. They all weave together around the value of community and raising awareness of social justice issues and impacts. Today, we'll be speaking about writing Memories and Elephants, about genres, influences, publishing, casual racism, and privilege practices and behaviours and their impact on individuals and society. Enjoy listening to this insightful and inspiring conversation. I hope it encourages you to read Memories and Elephants and to take some time to think beyond the dominant narrative. So let's head into the interview with Meaghan. Hello, Meaghan, and welcome to the Create Your Story podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for your connection across our writing and books. We've connected online as fellow authors in the Kind Press around writing and publishing, and it's great to chat further on this today. So could you provide a brief overview about your background, how you got to be where you are, and the work you do now?
Sure. Yes, thank you. So I'm a social worker and I have been for probably nearly 30 years now working alongside communities in various roles. Probably about the last 15 years, I've also been an academic teaching and researching in social work. So that's been my career to date. And social work is such a broad profession that's given me the opportunity for lots of different ways of working with people. And academia, I guess, has led me into doing more writing as well.
Awesome. Yes, that's great to see how all the different strands of your personal life and professional life have come together to this day. So
yeah.
Let's have a look at your book particularly. I'm really excited to talk about Memories and Elephants, The Art of Casual Racism, and congratulations on your book, published in early December 2021. So we've both recently enjoyed that process of taking a book from that idea, from jotting things down through to published book. Can you tell us a bit about what that process was like for you?
Sure. It actually happened quite quickly, the process, which was exciting and interesting. And it actually started with my submission to the This I Know Is True book through the Kind Press. And that happened really just because a good friend of mine, Annabelle Sharman, who writes the introductory chapter, she said to me, you should put a chapter in this book, you should get into this. And I looked at it and I looked at the submission and I thought, this looks awesome, but I don't think that I'm the right fit. Anyway, I said this to Annabelle and she said, look, please just talk to the publisher, talk to Natasha. Everything that you talk about, she has a similar view on crossing genres and perhaps maybe disrupting genres a bit and writing across academia and also creative writing and supporting women-led businesses, the whole gamut. So the long story short was that I did do the chapter, and then I got into a conversation. I'd already written the essay, and I got into a conversation with Natasha, and I said, look, I've got about 12 I'd like to publish. And several months later, there we are. I'd nearly finished all the essays. I did another self sort of lockdown to get the last bit done. But I had the work there, and it was just a beautiful fit to find the Kind Press, I think, for me.
Yes, I absolutely loved working with the Kind Press too. Natasha and her team are just really fabulous, kind, as their name suggests, and groundbreaking, I think, in the approaches that they take to different voices and, as you say, cross-genre work, pushing the boundaries a bit. So in terms of the actual pieces, were they written over many years? Or?
Oh, no, I smashed it out in a few months, probably in lockdown. I got a bit of inspiration, and one of the first essays was The Privilege of Sharing Parenting Fails. And I wrote that as a response to what I was seeing happening and kind of my internal discomfort with it. And once I started, I just wrote them all. And I guess lockdown probably had something to do with that. Time to think, walking and thinking, because I'd written them all in my head by the time I kind of sat down and put them down on paper. But I always saw them as a collection. So that's why I was so happy to put them out together, because I kind of felt like it told a story. They are each a standalone essay, but I felt like in their entirety it was a better story, if you like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I found reading it that there's a lot in the spaces between what you write. There's the spoken of what you experience, but also the unspoken. And I think, as you say, across the essays, it connects up into a bigger picture. So, yes. So can you share with us a snapshot of what Memories and Elephants, The Art of Casual Racism is about?
Sure. So I'd describe it as a series of socio-political memoir-based essays. So while they're memoir-based, I share my experiences against the backdrop of a bit of a socioeconomic analysis of Australian society, culture, the way we see ourselves. And I kind of try to shine a broader light on the story, on my story, which I think can be extended to other experiences. So I guess for me, the analysis is as important as the memory or the memoir. And that's kind of was my focus, Yeah,
they're beautifully told. And I think, to me, the power of them is really just capturing those moments in life when, I should call it casual racism, and casual because it just seems to slide off people's tongues because of that privilege that people feel. And I think just that ability to capture the moment, but also the impact on you. I think that's what I really, you talk about feeling winded at times, and the physical reaction of what happens on you is really beautifully told, but also it must have been hard to tell.
It was. I shed tears writing it, but I felt like it was an important story to tell. The hardest thing was deciding whether it was, in fact, my story to tell. And again, I consulted with people I love and my family. And basically they said, well, this is your story. This is your story. If you can't tell your own story, then what can you write about? But I was very careful not to appropriate an experience that wasn't my own, because I'm also a white Australian person. So I have, with that, all the inherent privileges that every other white Australian has. But I have borne witness to this casual racism with my Aboriginal family and my multicultural family. And it is my lived experience. But I really wanted to be clear to position myself as to not to be appropriating the lived experience beyond what was mine. And I think doing it as a memoir-based, I just told it how it happened. So I hope that came across. And the feedback I've had so far is that it did. That's how I came up with the we're all more than one story. We're all more than one defining characteristic. And I could be defined by lots of things, and lots of things that don't define me at all based on my appearance or where I live or what I do, when we're all so much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that point where you said, now we are more than one story. And I think that intricacy to the inside-outside dance that's hard to get right in your memoir. And I was interested to hear more about that dance. It's a dance you've engaged in for many decades now.
I guess it is, but I think it's probably something that, as we get older and wiser, we think about more, perhaps the complexities of when we're younger and we're living our life. And I was always very sure of my place in my family, absolutely, and I still am, and in my community. But I guess I talk about when, being part of an Aboriginal community and the commitment to the advancement and activism, when that morphed into work, I felt there was a change in me, that I became more aware that I could be taking up, as a white person, taking up space. And I was never made to feel like that by other people. This was my own internal dance, if you like. And I think it's an important one to be aware of. And I know at times I consciously stepped back from employment and changed to working mainstream, as we call it, because I was so fortunate to start my career as a community worker in an Aboriginal community controlled organisation. And that was a privilege that has shaped me beyond anything I could say. But then I also reached that time in that dance when I realised that, this is part of who I am too. And if I'm not honouring that, I'm not honouring my Aboriginal family and friends. If I'm feeling like I can't honour that part of my life, then that's not showing respect to those people that have had such an impact on my children and my family. And I feel like in some ways maybe the essay, particularly The Art of Casual Racism, was kind of my showing up for that and saying, okay, this is it. This is how I see it. This is who I am. And this is how I've lived it and continue to live it.
Yeah, and I think, as you said before, touching into your lived experience is a really powerful lens for each of us, particularly for you telling your story with so many different cultural experiences and community experiences and diversity, which is fabulous. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So how would you describe the genre that you write in, and what were your influences? We mentioned cross-genre before.
Yeah.
So.
I guess creative nonfiction, I guess, they're memoir-based narratives. I have always been a big reader, and I guess I never really realised the impact that reading creative nonfiction has had until quite recently when I started writing these. And I talk about it in the first essay where I am suddenly drawn back to reading this genre, because I'm in that, my head's in that space. I'm writing these stories in my head. So I'm back reading Helen Garner, I'm reading Joan Didion, I'm reading Roxane Gay. I'm just really quite obsessed with reading other people's stories. And I found that very validating, because there is so many different ways to do this. There's not one right way to write it. You write it as it comes, I guess. But yeah, I don't think I'd realised the impact that creative nonfiction has had until now.
Yeah, and you mentioned Julia Baird's Phosphorescence too, which I also read when I was writing my book, and I found that a really validating book.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I read that after I'd pretty much finished that essay. It came out, or I got hold of it anyway, and Julia Baird talks about, 20 years ago, as a young uni student, I think, finding Helen Garner, and I thought, oh gosh, I've talked about that. And I thought, of course, that's not an accident. We've all talked about that because it is such an influence. So hence, my line about, I felt late to the party, but in good company. So, yeah, I found that. I bought a copy for several friends. I found that book so important.
Yeah, and I think that's been my experience, and from reading your work, I think it's that trying to find a way to bring our personal life experiences into a narrative that it also sort of shines a light on ways it can help people or guide them on their own journey or give them some tools to think about things.
Yes.
Yeah. So you write in the second person, which I loved. It's one of my favourite voices, I guess, in literature. Why did you choose that? How did you come to writing as you rather than I or we?
I can't do this question justice, and several people have contacted me specifically to ask me why I chose to write the essays like that. And I've got no good answer, Terry, other than that's just how they came out. And I don't know if future writing will come out like that. I don't know, but I just couldn't write them any other way. That's how they came to me in my head. And so that's how they went down. And any analysis I'm doing now is retrospective. I'm wondering, why did I need to step back from it? But I don't know. This is all, with the benefit of hindsight. And it's interesting to think about. And I guess part of the answer will be how any future stuff comes out, if I continue to write it in that style or not.
Yeah, I found it's interesting you said you wrote the parent fails piece first, because that's the one where I actually really noticed how you're using you wonder. The piece is about that ability to joke about something with parenting fails that in other contexts would have dire circumstances or
absolutely.
Yeah, have judgment. And what I found was you were saying, you wonder. You wonder. And I particularly loved how you used it in that context.
Oh, thank you. And that was, like I said, I would come home and I would say, can you believe it? This happened or that happened. And I was in a way naively amazed at how people could not see that or understand or even feel a bit embarrassed to be able to joke about these things, because it is such a mark of privilege. I would have died before I told anyone my kids had NITs. And I'm still like that. And I know it's a socially responsible thing to do. But when people send those messages out, I think, oh my gosh, how can they do that? If you've never been judged, if you've never been stereotyped, if you've never felt that society could be making assumptions about you, then you have that freedom. And I got such great feedback about that essay. One of the best bits of feedback I got was someone messaged me and just said, oof, that got me in the gut. And thank you. And that was from the perspective of someone who was in a position to be able to do that, and she had never seen that was a privilege. And I wondered if I'd been a bit harsh then, but she was very gracious in her feedback.
That's amazing to hear. My feeling of reading the piece is, I think, because you took people on the journey with you, like you just said, I'm seeing this and I'm thinking this and I'm trying to work this out.
Yeah.
I think that just works incredibly well to
Thank you.
Get the point across, and for people to hear you processing with all your knowledge and all your life experiences. Where does this fit? This is not right. Yeah. And I think that way of approaching that type of content is going to have more impact, I think, than people saying, don't do that, for example.
Yeah.
I guess it's raising awareness, isn't it? And consciousness about that impact.
It is. And I think, honestly, that's probably one of my motivators for doing the essays, was I actually feel that the arts is a far better way to address social justice issues and awareness than straight academia. I joke about, as academics, we might write a paper for other academics to pretend they've read, or students to read because they have to. It may be great work, but it's to meet certain criteria for academia, and it doesn't necessarily reach a wider audience. And I've long felt that the most powerful stuff that I think it can be life-changing has been creative and in the arts. And I didn't consciously think, now I'm going to do this. I got to be in my bonnet about it. I started that, and then there was that sort of ripple effect where it grew from there. But I feel like that's where I can make a contribution, if any.
Yeah, but then also your academic work is important in another way.
I'm not diminishing, and I'm not a serious academic like some people. I've written a few things and I'm part of some great research that I'm very committed to, but I don't have a full-on tenured position. I have had in the past, and I consciously chose not to stay on that path. And it is important work, but I get far more joy out of creative writing, far more joy.
And was it hard to shift from the academic voice or academic way of working to the creative, more personal?
No. This is like the natural state, I think. It was great because a colleague and friend, another academic who read the book, messaged me, and this is the wonderful thing you learn about people. She said, fellow, overuser of capital letters, because I talk about in the, acknowledgements that I had a very kind, gentle editor who let me have my desire to capitalize important thoughts. And this friend said, I do that too. Everyone who knows me personally knows I do that. And we joked about it, and I joked about how my PhD supervisor many years ago had to beat that out of me. But in creative writing, we can do these things.
Yeah, it is great. My work was in government and in the TAFE sector mostly, where you're writing strategic documents, and there's a certain way of writing. So for me, it was just slipping, and I still think I've got a long way to go to get back to probably more natural voice. It's sort of dusting off or shifting gear from that academic. Yeah.
Exactly, because it is very different. It is far more rigid in corporate or academic writing, of course. Absolutely.
But as you say, it sounds like the way that you've worked with Memories and Elephants, it's like you've hit your natural gear, found a way to really write joyfully and perhaps express things that have been there for a long time.
Yeah, and it was an absolute joy to do. Absolutely. I loved doing it. I had so many ideas and thoughts that I wanted to get down. And as I said in the first essay, I probably think I only had about 12 stories in me. Well, I did. I had 12. And I knew I was done then with that. I felt like that was enough. And I know I spoke to Natasha from the Kind Press when I talked about putting them together. And I said, but I'm worried it's not enough. And she quoted Elizabeth Gilbert, who's another writer that I really admire as well, in saying that the story tells you when it's finished, to paraphrase, that the story will end when it ends. And I honestly felt like that. I would have had enough material, but I just felt that's what I wanted to say. And I feel that collection is enough as it is. And funnily enough, lots of feedback has been, I didn't want it to end. And I thought for a minute, oh gosh, is it not long enough? And then I thought, you know what? It was finished when it was finished. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful, just the way it is. As I said before, to me, it's that sense of each piece stands alone, but they sort of reverberate and echo and also keep you thinking a long time after you've read and something to go back to. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I think they work incredibly well. So you're a social worker, academic and author in the social justice area, as well as we've mentioned, across all sectors of government, non-government human services. Can you tell us more about your focus projects and writing there?
At the moment, I'm teaching at Sydney Uni. I've been teaching there for the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm working on a few research projects with my colleagues there that I'm really committed to and feel very fortunate to be involved in. So that's my academic work at the moment. And I'm also working on a couple of other creative writing projects that I'm hoping will come into fruition this year.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. There's more creative work in the pipeline too. Yeah, and I've spent some time just reading through some of your academic work too, so it's been interesting just to see the different perspectives. And in a way, your theme is pretty much is similar.
It is. Yeah. My work has whatever it is social justice, underpinned with my commitment to social justice. And it was interesting when I told a friend of mine about the creative work I was doing. He's a filmmaker, artist, musician, activist, Richard Franklin, his name is, and he's a very dear friend. And he said, oh, you've been dancing around the edges of the arts for a long time, so it's about time you jumped in. Because I would always be involved as a participant, as an audience member, as an advocate and a supporter. And I found that very validating from someone who's achieved so much in this space.
So have you got any advice if there's people who have a similar passion or a similar theme or focus in life around social justice and want to write more personally? Would you have any particular tips or thoughts for them?
Honestly, I think finding your authentic voice is the key. I don't really have any advice other than I think, particularly as females, particularly as women, to be unapologetic about wanting to have a voice and wanting to put something out into the world, not make ourselves smaller or feel we have to justify and apologise for wanting to do that. I think my advice is take up space, find your big voice. As one of my dear friends and colleagues, Dr. Maurice Terrer, talks about in social workers, find your big voice and find your authentic voice. I think that would be my strongest advice. And it doesn't matter if you're not ready to share your work. I feel that it helps us grow so much in doing it, and you will find your audience. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Find your big voice. That's
yes.
Yeah,
I love it too. And I quote Maurice very regularly with that beautiful term.
Yeah. And as you say, it's not all about publication. I'm just working with a group of women writers at the moment. And I think publication is important to think about as a potential path, but it's really great to have that free writing and that exploring, and that ability to find your big voice comes from play.
I think that we know what we want really in our heart to do with our work. I know when I had written a few of the essays, I told a friend and they said, oh, maybe you won't need to get them published. Maybe writing them will be enough. And I said, no, it won't be. I want them published. I felt I had something to say, and I knew I wanted to put it out in the world. And it's just about finding the right way to do that. And and the right time and things like that.
It's great that you did find the right way and the right time. And I think that's just part of the author journey, isn't it? It's meeting the right people, collaborating with the publishers, the editors, the people encouraging us behind the scenes. Yeah, it's all part of the rich journey.
Yes.
So, question that I'm asking all people on the podcast, being the Create Your Story podcast, is how have you created your story over your lifetime?
Oh, gosh, how have I created my story? I think that I've never really had a plan particularly. I know that works for some people. I've always been open to opportunities and not been frightened to take risks creatively, like in my career, leave a job, find another job. I think I've kind of just tried to live true to my values, and my commitment to my family has been my driving motivator. But even if 5 years ago someone had said that I would be doing creative nonfiction, I would have been like, really? It's not like I had that on the plan. It's not like I thought I really want to write. I'm going to sit here and think about what to write about. The stories came to me and I just told them. And I feel like a bit of a witness in that sense, that it's our obligation to share what we learn. So I guess my plan has just been to try and do no harm and live a good life.
Yeah, it sounds like show your wisdom along the way too.
Well, we hope we get some along the way. I don't know, but we hope so, don't we?
We certainly do.
I say to my students, the more I know, the less I know, and that remains true.
Yep, that's true. So my book, Wholehearted, is about wholehearted self-leadership tips for women and practices. Thank you. And so I like to add to the body of work I've created by talking to people about their top wholehearted self-leadership tips and practices, especially for women. So, I'd love to hear yours.
Honestly, more and more, and I just had a conversation with a dear friend today about this. It's about, we say lift a sister up. Let's take every opportunity to support each other, to promote, to validate, to do all those things that lifts us up individually and as friends, but also it helps all of us as women, as writers, as creatives, whatever it might be. And about that authenticity, about just showing up as you are, doing your best to support the cause is what I'm pretty big on. I think it's kind of that simple and that complex.
Yeah, and it is too, but I love that lift your sister up. And I just really appreciated your support on the way through my writing journey. Often there in the background saying, well done, thank you, and just liking posts and things. I mean, it really helps.
I feel like we talk a lot about supporting the arts or creativity, whether it be Black businesses and I have this conversation with students where they say they might really want to support a female-led business or a Black business, but they may not be in a financial position to do that. And you can share a post, you can like a post, you can spread the word, and that is helping, that is supporting, and that's showing up. There's lots of ways we can do that for each other.
Absolutely.
And if we are in a position to purchase something, let's think about it. I read a quote recently, the way we spend our money basically is a vote for the world we want to live in. So do we want to try to support small business, female-led, all those things, and less the, big multinationals? If we can do that, we should try the best we can.
So true. But I also agree with your point that there's so much you can do that doesn't cost money too. Doing reviews for people, sharing their
work.
Podcasts, different reviews on blog posts. It's certainly been part of my journey to both acknowledge others and be acknowledged by others. Again, it's another sort of type of dance that we can engage in with others. I know my life's so much richer for it, as I can see yours is too. So.
Oh, absolutely.
So thank you. And that wraps up our conversation for today. It's been lovely to have a chat with you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Terry. I've really enjoyed thinking about some of those questions you posed. So thank you.
My pleasure. So where can people find more about you and your work online?
Well, I'm on Instagram and there's a link to my stuff there. I'm late to that party, but, I'm there for it. I'm finding it a very supportive environment. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn also. So I'm not hard to find.
And we'll pop the link to your book too in the show notes. And just encourage everybody to read Memories and Elephants, The Art of Casual Racism. It's a really important book. I think everybody should read it. And make sure you do all those things we've talked about. Post a review and share it with others too.
Thank you.
Thanks
Terry.
So much. My pleasure. Thanks for listening today, and I hope you found it inspiring and supportive. You can find the episode show notes, get your free copy of Chapter 1 of Wholehearted, and find out more about my books, coaching, and other offerings at quietwriting.com. Connect with me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, where I am at Writing Quietly. Please leave a review on your favourite podcast app too to help others find the show and create their story. And warmest wishes for you as you create your story in the world.